Welcome back. All right, so I haven't done this yet this year. It's a good time to do it. Looking at 31 players. Well, it's 32 players because one team I had to put two on 31 teams who were the ones I was cheering for most this year. That looking back, I most enjoyed watching. Now, does that mean they're my favorite players? In some cases, yes. In some cases, probably not amongst the entire team. But let's go through it. For Anaheim, Anaheim had a rough season, right? Max Comtois was a player who was relatively consistent for them this year and really did show that he was a good scorer. 55 games, 16 goals, 17 assists, 33 points. I don't know if he can do it again next year. I have no idea, but it was fun to watch this year. Again, not necessarily a fun season for Anaheim, but he was enjoyable. On the Arizona front, Jacob Chikrin. So when the Norris winner came out and we all looked at who did and didn't get votes and what a shame, Chikrin is a guy that probably should have got more consideration than he did. 56 games, 18 goals, 23 assists, 41 points. And he's good defensively. Like, it's not like Chikrin's really, really weak defensively. He's a very good all-around defenseman. If he didn't play in Arizona, he'd get more attention. But that's what happens when you play in Arizona. Boston, it's got to be Patrice Bergeron. It has to be Patrice Bergeron. And I will say, truthfully, I had considered McAvoy. I had considered Swayman, though he didn't play enough. And I had considered Marchand, who I still think is their MVP. But I went with Bergeron, 54 games, 23 goals, 25 assists, 48 points. I do not believe in a perfection line, but I do believe in a perfection center, and that's Patrice Bergeron. So Bergeron has been just so consistent. 54 games, 23 goals, 25 assists, 48 points for Bergeron. Buffalo, Linus Ullmark. Now, Ullmark's a UFA. He may very well leave Buffalo this summer. His record, 9-6-3, is nothing short of remarkable when you look at the record of that team overall. The 917 save percentage, again, with the defense in front of him that was kind of porous and the amount of shots he's facing, and not just the shots, but the high-quality shots. Ullmark had a remarkable season. I'll be interested to see how much that's worth, either to Buffalo to try to keep him or to another team that picks him up. Ullmark looked like the real deal this year. It may put some teams off that he didn't play as many and he missed so many games with injury, but his numbers will definitely tempt somebody. So Calgary, the cop out would be Markstrom or Tanev, right? As a Canuck fan, and I love Markstrom, 22, 19, and 2 with a 904 save percentage. But I thought, no, you can't have Markstrom as the guy that you enjoyed the most watching for Calgary this year. There were some good points. But throughout the season, it has to be Andrew Mangiapane. 56 games, 18 goals, 14 assists, 32 points. I've been a huge fan of Mangiapane's for years, and now finally the goal scoring is matching his work ethic. His work ethic has always been above board fantastic. Jacob Slavin is my pick from Carolina, because of course it's Jacob Slavin. 52 games, 3 goals, 12 assists, 15 points. So this is where it reveals what I enjoy watching hockey. I really enjoy defensive defensemen. For me, anytime I was playing street hockey, road hockey, floor hockey, that was the role I would take on, and I'd be all banged up and bruised up. I'm talking about like middle school, high school, be all banged up and bruised up by the end of the day. But I was happy if the other guy didn't score. I was happy if I blocked those shots, and I would try to do it without hooking and holding and slashing, but didn't always work out that way. So the fact that Slavin is able to play so well defensively and he only takes one penalty and it's a delay of game is nothing short of remarkable. Slavin's been the Rod Langway of this generation. I do believe that. Honorable mention to Svechnikov for being dynamic on almost every play. Honorable mention as well to Necas, who took a great stride forward, and of course Brett Pesce. Pesce's right there with Slavin. Chicago, it has to be Alex DeBrincat, doesn't it? Just has to be. So I picked DeBrincat as a guy that I thought would score 50 goals, and then last year, so this year it's back. 52 games, 32 goals, 24 assists, 56 points. And if there'd been 82 games this year, there's the possibility he would have threatened 50. At the very least, he should have got 45. So DeBrincat, the goal scoring's there. Him and Kane, just fantastic chemistry. We'll see if that carries over into next year. And if DeBrincat can develop that kind of chemistry with other younger players as well for when the day comes that Patrick Kane's not there, right? So yeah, we'll see. Colorado, Giannis Donskoy. who I named my favorite Avalanche player before he played a game for the Avalanche because he was my favorite Sharks player. And now this year, the offense backs up, again, it backs up the work ethic like Mangiapane. And the numbers are very similar. 51 games, 17 goals, 14 assists, 31 points. That's depth scoring. And for Colorado, who disappointed in the playoffs this year, Donskoy is the kind of guy that provides that depth that should make them a contender for years to come. Columbus, I went with Jack Roslovic, who was one of my favorite Jets as well. In 48 games after the trade from Winnipeg, Roslovic, 12 goals, 22 assists, 34 points. And he saves Jarmo Kekalainen from trading out Dubois for a guy in Line A that just hasn't worked. It hasn't clicked. So Roslovic was very good, and he was kind of the throw-in in that trade, right? Kind of like, yeah, and Roslovic, because he's sitting out and he doesn't want to play in Winnipeg, and then he wants to go to Columbus anyways. So, yeah, he turns out to be the best of the three players in the trade. Who knew? Dallas, it has to be Roope Hintz. Played through a lot of pain this year. When he was in the lineup, he was fantastic, and then he'd be out with pain again. 41 games, 15 goals, 28 assists, 43 points. Healthy, over an 82-game schedule, he could get 90, 95 points. So Roope Hintz is an excellent player, very competitive, hardworking. What's not to like? Detroit, it has to be Jonathan Bernier. Their goaltending was pretty good this year, and Greiss was excellent as well, but I have to go with Bernier, 9-11-1 with a 914 save percentage. And he seems to be getting better as he gets older. Not like Fleury level, but maybe a little bit below a Fleury level. And we'll see what that does for him in this offseason. I think he probably returns to Detroit, but again, UFA status and all, right? Oilers, Darnell Nurse. Nurse took that next step this year too, and it was nice to see that in Norris voting, people recognized it. 56 games, 16 goals, 20 assists, 36 points. So there are still little parts of his game he needs to work on here and there, but he really looked excellent. It's part of the reason why you can let Tyson Barrie go, because you've got 16 goals on the blue line from Nurse. That could very well hit 20 next year, could hit 25. He had 16 goals in 56 games. He could hit 25 goals in a season. And as the years go by, he'll garner more attention from Norris voters. Florida, it has to be Carter Verhaeghe. Absolutely fantastic season after Tampa wasn't able to afford to keep him, proving that no, Tampa didn't keep everybody from last year. Verhaeghe, 43 games, 18 goals, 18 assists, 36 points. And if he can score at that rate for Florida next year, they're going to be really happy with that, aren't they? Verhaeghe's a bargain right now, and that will eventually change. But Verhaeghe this year, absolutely fantastic. Honorable mention to Hornquist on this as well. Hornquist did pretty well after he went to Florida, didn't he? As well as Sam Bennett. Bennett may very well end up being a guy that next year I may have on this board. LA, I went with Cal Peterson. It was a rough year for most of the Kings, so I went with Peterson, who was 9-18-5, but had a save percentage of 9-11, which is remarkable. Again, behind the defense he was behind. I understand the win-loss record is poor, but the Kings weren't very good this year. Peterson, we'll see what his ceiling is. With goaltenders, you never know until they're actually a starter. That should be an opportunity afforded to Cal Peterson this coming season. But with all the upgrades the Kings are making, do they try to change the goaltending? Like, does Jonathan Quick go, and do they bring somebody else in to play with Peterson? It may be a 1A, 1B situation no matter what they do with their goaltending, even if it's nothing. The Minnesota Wild, I looked over the roster, and I'm like, okay, it has to be Kirill Kaprizov. 55 games, 27 goals, 24 assists, 51 points. And he's called Kirill the Thrill for a reason. And not just because it rhymes, but because the guy is absolutely transformative. He has changed the Minnesota Wild. Every time he's on the ice, you can tell. His line completely changes the game when they're out there. The other three lines for Minnesota still play kind of that boring style that we're used to from Minnesota. His line, no. Any line that Kaprizov's on, it is just fantastic. It's a powder keg waiting to go off, and I really, really enjoyed watching him play this year. Montreal, it kind of has to be Nick Suzuki, doesn't it? And I say kind of has to be because I have been a huge fan of Suzuki's now for the last 3 years, and with 56 games played, 15 goals, 26 assists, 41 points, the only thing I'm crossing my fingers on for Suzuki right now is face-offs. To really, truly be recognized as one of the best two-way forwards in the game, which I think is his destiny, he has to get the face-off numbers up above 50%. He has to get into like the 55, 56% range, and then we'll start talking about Selkies for him. But he has been excellent throughout the playoffs. He was excellent throughout the season as well. And if him and Caulfield are as enjoyable to watch as I think they're going to be starting next season, Montreal may be better than people expect. Nashville, Matthias Ekholm. I wanted to say Arvidsson, but I couldn't. Arvidsson didn't have a great year. Matthias Ekholm did. 48 games, 6 goals, 17 assists, 23 points. And here's why I say Ekholm, great all year. His plus-minus was a plus 19. Roman Josi was a minus 11. That's a 30-point difference. So while plus-minus is not a perfect number, and it's not a great measure, when there's a 30-point difference over a shortened schedule, that tells you that Ekholm defensively had an elite-level season. And again, Nashville's always a team that it feels like you have a defenseman being overshadowed. At one point, Josi was overshadowed by the defenseman he was playing with. Now it's Ekholm's turn. And this is why when there was talk about, well, maybe Ekholm's going to get traded, I thought Nashville would be crazy to trade Ekholm. And with the numbers he put up this year, I just can't see him getting traded. I really can't. I think there's other defensemen that I would probably look at trading before Ekholm if I was David Poile. For New Jersey, I went with Miles Wood. I thought about Sharon Govich. I did. I thought about Sharon Govich, but Miles Wood, 55 games, 17 goals, 8 assists, 25 points. Those 17 goals born out of hard work, born out of effort. And Miles Wood, I thought, had the best season of his career this year. I really did. For the Islanders, I went with J.G. Pajot. Yes, I love Pulock and Pelech. Absolutely. Varlamov was great. But J.G. Pajot again showed in the playoffs why he's got the contract he does. 54 games, 14 goals, 14 assists, 28 points during the regular season. His numbers will never dazzle. He's never going to be a guy who's, a top scorer. But he is definitely a gamer. He is a guy that you can count on in a key game. If it's a game 7 and if he's able to skate at all, he'll be out there. He played injured in the conference final or semifinals this year. Didn't score any points during that semifinal, but he was out there and he was playing. He was doing his best while he was injured, and that's J.G. Pajot. And he's shown that kind of heart all the way back to when he was in Ottawa in 2017. The Rangers, I went with Keandre Miller. Yes, there are others you could put up, but Keandre Miller, here's why. In 53 games, 5 goals, 7 assists, 12 points. Not remarkable offensive numbers. I think those numbers are going to come up. Defensively sound. In all the games I watched of the Rangers this year, I didn't see breakdowns from Miller the way I did from some of their other defensemen. I thought Miller was solid. I didn't think he looked like a rookie. You wouldn't have had a clue he was a rookie when you watched him play. And as great as it is to see Fox get a Norris, which was a little bit unexpected because not in the playoffs, but great season for Fox, I think Miller has a ceiling just as high as Fox. And I think they'll be totally different style of defensemen. But much like Nashville, you need that. You need that, the offensive guy, the defensive guy. You need some physicality from different guys on the blue line. I think the Rangers are set, and I think Keandre Miller starts a part of that. For Ottawa, I went with Tim Stützle. There were a few I could have gone with, and Nick Paul, absolutely honorable mention, as well as Connor Brown. Those guys were fantastic this year, and if I'm Seattle, I'm looking to see if maybe one of the more remarkable guys from that second half of the season might be available in expansion. I'm thinking no. Ottawa's really well protected, but Stützle, for me, 53 games, 12 goals, 17 assists, 29 points. He showed the year after his being drafted that Ottawa made the right pick, and he looks good, and he got better as the season went along. Not all rookies do that. There are a lot of rookies that'll be great, and then they fall off. Another example of that is Lafreniere with the Rangers. He got better as the season went along. If it had been an 82-game season, Lafreniere would have got more consideration for the Calder. Philadelphia, I went with James Van Riemsdyk. He was left for dead. He was done. His career was finished. 56 games, 17 goals, 26 assists, 43 points. It was a disappointing year for the Flyers, but for Van Riemsdyk, he was very consistent. He was very good, and it was remarkable to see him kind of turn back the clock a little bit this year. For Pittsburgh, I went with Teddy Bluger because, of course I did. 43 games, 7 goals, 15 assists, 22 points. Again, he will never score a lot of points. He's never going to be a guy who scores a ton of goals, but the work ethic is fantastic. At some point in time, he could have a season like Donskoy, like Mangiapane, where he ends up putting up goals and points to make people say, what happened here? Like a Brian Rust, but I don't think it'll be on that same level as what Rust's been able to do, and he had a great year too. But for me, Bluger is the epitome of hard work. Works hard on every shift and always makes the line that he's on better than it probably has any right to be. For San Jose, I went with a player that's kind of like that for them this year, Rudolf Balcers. It was tough to find players for San Jose that I was thinking. I really enjoyed watching him play this year. A lot of sadness with San Jose. But 41 games, 8 goals, 9 assists, 17 points. That's not too shabby. That would mean over an 82-game schedule, that paces out to 34 points, and it paces out to 16 goals. So that's not bad for a guy in Balcers that looked like he might be a tweener, too good for the AHL, maybe not good enough for the NHL. Those are the guys who usually end up over in Europe. But for Balcers, I thought he played well. I'll be interested to see over a full schedule in San Jose where there's a little more pressure, how he does. St. Louis, Jordan Kyrou. A great start to the season, and then it kind of fell off for him. 55 games, 14 goals, 21 assists, 35 points. I think the sky's the limit for Kyrou. I think he's going to be the best forward in St. Louis in, I'll say 3 years' time. Sure, why not? Yeah, and people can take me to task in 3 years, but again, it comes down to work ethic and also not looking like a kid in a lot of situations that he's put in. Makes some smart decisions out on the ice. This is why when we talk about the draft, we talk about hockey IQ. This is part of what hockey IQ is, that the guy's going to come in and when he's on the ice, we're not going to see him make a pass and go, oh, what are you doing? What was that for? At least we won't be doing that more with him as a rookie than we will for other players when they're older. So Kyrou, to me, as a young player, is really impressed. For Tampa, I went with Ross Colton because I don't think anybody expected in 30 games he'd have 9 goals and 3 assists. So Ross Colton comes into the lineup and produces and shows that once again that Tampa Bay has an endless supply, it seems, an endless supply of good young players waiting to come up. Look, they lose Verhaeghe over to Florida. He scores 18 goals. And they still end up being one of the best teams in the league. And we're not looking at that and going, man, what a mistake losing Verhaeghe was. No, they're fine. They've got Ross Colton. And there's other guys that'll come up and play next year when players have to leave because of cap reasons. There are other kids that are going to come up and play. And we're all going to act like we're surprised when they're good players out of Tampa Bay's farm system. Toronto, I went with Jason Spezza. Yes, Hall. Yes, absolutely. Hall had a really good year. There are other players as well that were enjoyable to watch. But Spezza turning back the clock, kind of fun. 54 games, 10 goals, 20 assists, 30 points for Spezza. And I remember his last year in Dallas, I thought he's kind of done. I thought, okay, so he's kind of, I mean, the effort's still there, but the body, like the spirit is strong, the body is weak. And it kind of felt like that's where it was. Well, Spezza in Toronto, it has worked very, very well. Probably better than it would if he was playing anywhere else. And, Toronto's got a bargain with Spezza again next year. Vancouver, I had to go with Besser. Even though Horvat is probably my favorite player in the league right now, because, and that's a tough call because Patrice Bergeron still exists. But Brock Besser, a player who last summer there was discussion about maybe Vancouver doesn't want him. Maybe he goes to Minnesota. Is he going to end up going to Minnesota? What would Vancouver want from Minnesota? And I was bewildered, and I still am that those rumors were out there. 56 games played, he didn't miss a game, 23 goals, 26 assists, 49 points. In a season that was basically a write-off for the Canucks, Besser was great, and that means 23 different occasions I had to leave my room here while watching a Canuck game, go and find my wife, and do the Brock Besser pose I do every time that he scores a goal. And it's just think of Paul Heyman and the way he growls out Brock Lesnar, and it's sort of like that complete with the Hulk Hogan pose, and there you go. You got the celebration when he scores a goal. I love Besser. I have loved the guy right from when he came into the NHL, and still, I think he's fantastic. I don't know how many goals he ends up scoring in his career. I don't know if he's ever going to be a 50. I think 50 is probably a little bit high. Can he get to 40? Yeah, I think he can get to 40 at some point in his career. I'm not saying next year or anything, but yeah, he can. So here's to hoping that core that the Canucks have that I like enough that I've started getting jerseys with the names on the back that are of the current core. Hopefully that means something. Not that I'm getting the jerseys, but hopefully that this core looks good. Ends up reaping. Hopefully the Canucks reap the benefits of that, and by extension the fandom. Vegas, I went with Mark Stone, the turnover machine. And I don't mean like in a bad way. I mean in a good way, turnover machine. Usually when a player's a turnover machine, you're like, oh, he's a turnover. Did he turn it over again? Just wake me up when it's over. Stone, constant. 55 games, 21 goals, 40 assists, 61 points. And if you're anywhere near him with the puck, he will get it. That's it. He will get the puck. He's enjoyable to watch. His celebrations sometimes are a little bit over the top, but it's Mark Stone. You got hair like that, you kind of got to celebrate, right? So I know I would if I did. I don't. So kudos to him for being able to celebrate and have hair like that. For Washington, I went with a player that nothing was expected of him this year. Daniel Sprong, 42 games, 13 goals, 7 assists, 20 points. More was expected of Sprong at certain points of the season than anybody could have expected due to injury, due to protocols, and whoever was out of the lineup, and Sprong answered the call each time. So Sprong, who's kind of bounced around the league a bit, I don't know that he's done bouncing around the league either, but this year he did very well, and it was enjoyable to watch and unexpected. And then finally, Winnipeg. I'm going with Nikolai Ehlers. Nick Ehlers, 47 games, 21 goals, 25 assists, 46 points. I think Ehlers gets better every single year. And I think Winnipeg has an excellent, solid core up front. A lot of fun to watch. One of the best goaltenders in the NHL in Hellebuck. But Ehlers is just, he's such a dynamic forward, and he's so much fun to watch night in and night out, that even though Connor, I love Connor Scheifele. I know what happened with Scheifele. I know the whole Jake Evans thing. Once we get to the regular season next year, that all kind of falls by the wayside. It's the only incident with Scheifele. So you kind of grin and bear it. But Ehlers, to me, was the most fun to watch for Winnipeg this year. And like I said, every year he just keeps getting better. So there you go. So here's my question to you. Who was your favorite player to watch on any of these teams on the board this year? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. And yeah, Calgary gets 2 names on the board. Good job, Calgary. I'll talk to you guys again soon.